Boise State, right now projected, these are all projections, but projected to get a first-round bye because they are supposed to be the conference champion out west. Is this surprising to you? Because this could change, and it will change. But right now, the Broncos and Ashton Genty would get a first-round bye.
I mean, that's the way it's set up, right? To where you have the conference champions get a higher seed. And I think there are people already complaining about this, saying there should be no bye or no automatic bid for conference champions. It should just be put the best teams in and let them, duel it out. So I think that's the confusing part of this bracket, is that you see this bracket and you're like, oh, this is how it sets up, but not so fast, my friend, as Lee Corso would say. Because a lot of these teams, there are still games to be played for their conference title. Like looking at Texas, looking at Miami, hell, even looking at Oregon. So a lot of these, it feels like you can put them on the screen and you can project them, but it feels like a moot point until they actually play the game. I think the one thing that stood out to me was Miami didn't even play this week, and yet they fell in the rankings. They're like, nah, we're going to put Alabama ahead of you guys. Like, sorry. You've been sitting around doing nothing. We know it's your bye week, but we're going to drop you at 8.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I will say, man, they were bashing Texas on the show last night. They're like, who has Texas played? I'm not a believer in Texas, which is fine.
What? Who have they played?
Well, what I think bothered me, it's not, and look, that's a fair assessment. I mean, Texas is number 3, right? They're in line to play for the SEC championship. They get Kentucky this weekend. Then they go to Texas A&M. If they win out, they are playing for the SEC title. But what I would say is I thought it was sort of selective outrage. Like, who has Penn State played and beaten? Who has Indiana played and beaten? So it's a fair assessment, but it doesn't just apply to Texas. This can apply to a lot of teams or a number of teams. Look at Miami. Who has Miami played and beaten? So it's not just the Longhorns. There are a number of teams in the top 12 right now who, if you look at their schedule, you say, I don't know about this team. So that's not specific to the Longhorns, but I thought it was interesting. Like Notre Dame, Double D is yelling, Notre Dame. They beat Texas A&M, but I mean, Texas A&M right now on the outside looking in, they're sitting at 15, so they're right there. But, again, there are a lot of teams that have to prove themselves based on their schedule, and that's why the committee really likes Georgia, because if you look at strength of schedule, the Dogs have played the toughest schedule in college football.
Yeah, but they also have 2 losses.
Correct.
So, you can argue it both ways. I think that's the most frustrating part about this, is that they say things and justifications for the reasons why they have certain teams at certain spots, and it can go both ways. Because you look at teams further down the board, it's like, okay, why doesn't that argument apply to this team? And at the end of the day, I said this last week, it's like when your parent tells you, you ask, hey, why do I have to do this? Because I said so. That's why.
Right.
That's the committee. That is their reasoning. Because it's the best teams, and this is our opinion. Do we have to back it up with anything? Not really, because this is our TV show that we are, producing. And these are the teams we want to see in. So at the end of the day, I think this is going to be a lot of fodder for argument and, discussion between college football fans. But at the end of the day, nobody's asking us our opinion.
Right. What would be fascinating to me is Ohio State having to go to Boise State in the quarterfinals. Like that would be, you would think in theory, if you're not really looking at the rankings and strength of schedule and all of the different factors that go into this, you'd think, well, Boise State's got to go to Ohio State, right? No. Boise State on the blue turf would host Ohio State. Would probably be the biggest game in Boise in its history. Has to be. No question. Now, again, this can change, but I love this. And also, we're going to see this change over the weekend. Like BYU has to play number 21 Arizona State on Saturday. BYU coming off that loss to Kansas, so that's not a guarantee. You've got, all of a sudden, you've got Army sitting at number 19. I don't think this is going to happen. What if they beat Notre Dame on Saturday? Do the Black Knights slip in? And then you've got Indiana visiting the Shoe. If Indiana loses to the Buckeyes, how far do the Hoosiers fall? Because the Hoosiers haven't played anybody So if you talk about a team that, all right, needs a good win or a big win over a ranked team or a team that is considered very good, Indiana is that team. If they lose to Ohio State, how far do they drop? Right now they're sitting at 5. If they lose and then all of a sudden A&M wins, Colorado wins, I think there's a small possibility that Indiana could fall out completely, but they're a great story, so maybe they don't. There's a lot of criteria that goes into this.
Yeah, the more I think about it, this upcoming Saturday, this has to be the biggest game for Indiana in school history for football. Does it not? Like, I'm trying to think, like, maybe there were years when I was little when Indiana was good at football, question mark?
Nope.
I don't think so, though, right?
Nope. They've always been terrible. This is the losingest program in college football history. Indiana is always bad at football. Seriously, when they have a good season, it's like, hey, Indiana won 6 games this year. Seriously. It's not even close. This is their best season ever by far. That's why they signed Cignetti to that massive contract, because they actually have excitement around their football program. This is a basketball school. So, yeah, you're right. Indiana has never been this good.
It is the first time in Indiana history they have won double-digit games.
Oh, my God, yes. I did not realize that. Woo! Boy. Yes, they're terrible. But what if they win? I don't think they will. But you're right. This is the game in the history of their program.
Do you think they know that? Like, how much pressure does that add to college-aged kids? Do you think that's an X factor in this game? Nerves?
Normally I would say yes, but I don't think so. I don't think so with Indiana. They're playing with house money right now. Before the season, who was talking about Indiana? Maybe Indiana basketball. Nobody was talking about Indiana football. Again, you're talking about the losingest program in college football history. And have you heard a single person say, I think Indiana's going to go into Ohio State and whip up on the Buckeyes? No. Everyone and their dog expects Indiana to go into the shoe and take the L. Maybe they will. Maybe they won't. But if you're Indiana and if you're Curt Cignetti, like, your message is, guys, let it rip. You have nothing to lose. You've already set records. You're already in the middle of the best season in Indiana history. Nobody expects anything more from you. Nobody expects you to win at Ohio State. So go out there and play your best game. I think all the pressure is on Ohio State because they know they should win this game, and it's not a guarantee.
Google me.
Yeah, but that's definitely the biggest game of the weekend, is it not? Like, between teams that are in the college football playoff, especially for Indiana, because I think you're right. I think the way that the committee kind of justifies things, if Indiana loses and they don't look particularly good in this game, I think they might be out. Because at the end of the day, it's a TV show, and it's also about ratings. So I don't know how large the Indiana football fan base is, but I can totally see the committee cooking them out. And they've done things that are unfair before. Like, look at last year, what they did to Florida State. So I feel like this is a thing that the committee will look at. And I think the question mark is, if Indiana loses, but they look good in the game, maybe that's when the discussion starts.
Yeah, I think that's